Nickel. While nickel prices have declined significantly over about a month or so, in my opinion, it has created an attractive opportunity. And just in time for this opportunity, I welcome you to our June 2024 nickel report, the hottest nickel report that you can find on the net. For much more details, join us at myfinanceteacher.org. Let's start the report with a review of fundamentals, and after that we'll talk about the price. Regarding the fundamentals, let's start with demand. Demand for nickel, one of the main contributors to the demand for nickel is of course production of stainless steel. There are different types of stainless steel. The 300 series has the highest content of nickel. And looking at the actual data, perhaps Chinese economic recovery might help with the recovery in demand for nickel. For example, the 300 series steel inventories in China have decreased last week. That's the first decrease in those inventories since late May. That's basically since the price for nickel has declined significantly. And that has actually happened while May output of stainless steel increased by 16% versus April. Again, hinting at possible economic recovery, as increased production of steel is accompanied by decreased inventories. And while at the same time Chinese imports of ferronickel and NPI nickel pig iron have decreased in May by about 10%, on the other hand imports of nickel ore have increased by a whopping 56%. So going into the next several months, I do expect a recovery in both nickel demand as well as nickel prices. Stainless steel demand is also expected to grow in double digits during 2024, according to multiple experts in the know. Moving on from the east to the west, US has announced tariffs, significant tariffs, by the way, 100% tariffs on Chinese EVs and 25% on critical materials coming from China. These tariffs, of course, are profitable for Western nickel producers. Such producers as, for example, Canada Nickel and many others that we do discuss over here in the Juniors in Metals category at myfinanceteacher.org. So again, for much more details, join us at myfinanceteacher.org. Beyond tariffs, though, another interesting development in the US is that recently the US Department of Defense has announced a call for white paper proposing solutions to enhance domestic nickel supply as well as supply chains for other critical materials. Again, a very positive development for the future of demand for nickel. As for supply, New Caledonia is still experiencing significant unrest, and as you might know, New Caledonia is among the top 5, perhaps even top 3 largest nickel producing countries in the world. For 2024 though, with all of this unrest taking place, the production isn't expected to be that large, again pressuring prices higher, I think later into 2024 and into early 2025. By the way, talking about early 2025, we often observe replenishment of stockpile purchases somewhere around the Chinese New Year, which is usually around February time. Coming back to supply though, at the recent nickel conference in Indonesia, one of the country's ministers talked about high-grade nickel deposits running out by perhaps 2035. But the Indonesian Mining Association warned their government that high-grade nickel deposits might in fact be depleted within the next 6 years. After all, in the last 3 years, average grade of some large mines in Indonesia decreased from 2% nickel content to around only 1.7% of nickel content. And with the recent drop in nickel prices, I don't think that this ongoing grade decline is priced in. And yes, Indonesia might be able to increase their reserves further, combating that high grade decline, but increasing the reserves would most likely require going into forest designated areas. Moving on from reserves downstream into smelters, campaign officials of Indonesia's president-elect, so the future upcoming president, Some of the campaign elections mentioned possible moratorium, possible ban on new nickel smelters. Again, perhaps limiting some of the future supply growth. And perhaps some of the similarly strict measurements might be applied to some of the miners as well. There are some reports of deadly mining taking place, which is of course terrible. The markets don't like bloody materials, whether it's blood diamonds or bloody nickel. And again, while deadly mining is obviously terrible, it does put Western producers, again, such as those that we discuss at myfinanceteacher.org, it does put Western producers into more favorable light. So overall, given the demand and supply developments, the combined effect is, I think, deficit, perhaps even some deficits into the end of 2024, as well as more likely into early 2025. Beyond that, into 2025 or perhaps over the next couple of years, we do expect a huge demand wave for nickel. There are many experts talking about that, such as, for example, the CEO of Canada Nickel, and in expectation of that huge demand wave, they have been developing their flagship Crawford project to take advantage of that increased demand. Again, more specific, exciting details on some of the most promising junior developers. Check out this category of juniors in metals. Next, moving on to nickel price. Historically, nickel price has been following these cycles which last for around 155 days on average, at least since the middle of 2017. More recently though, around the early 2024, the cycles are getting a little bit murky because we see some sort of a triple bottom over here, so it's a little tricky to identify the particular cycle low. Perhaps any of these three options are good enough. Perhaps one way of looking at it is starting at this left side of that triple bottom for one cycle lasting between late 2023 and the end of March. That would imply another cycle that so far has been going on for about 90 days, and I do expect a cycle low sometime over the next couple of weeks. After all, RSI has declined all the way down to around 32. That's pretty close to oversold, hence some sort of a bounce, perhaps into the rallying phase of a new cycle, is likely relatively soon. And again, for much more details, make sure to join us at myfinanceteacher.org. Have a wonderful Wednesday. Bye bye.